right. Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday!
And my name is Mother Banjo.
I'm Anthony Ihrig.
And we are joined today by Sam Miltich up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
Hello.
And this is the back catalog listening party where we gather every Friday at 4 p.m. Central to listen to music and to talk about it. And it looks like Chris got here early to get a front row seat. And then Alan from Texas said Friday, finally. And then Gary as well. Hi, Gary. Thank you all for jumping in early today on the back catalog listening party. What are you drinking out there? Shoot us in the comments. Let us know what you're drinking on this happy hour edition. It's summertime. It's 90 degrees in Minneapolis. So I'm drinking a Paloma. And if you don't know what that is, it's grapefruit juice, tequila, club soda, lime, a little salt among the rim.
Wow, that is fancy. It must be Friday.
Yeah. Well, only for you guys. I don't drink like this every night.
That's no Tuesday cocktail, I'll tell you that.
No, Tuesday cocktail is the box wine. So what are you drinking, Sam, in Grand Rapids?
I wish it was something fancy, but it's hot today. This is just ice water with a little lemon in it.
Nothing wrong with that. Hydration's important.
I was picking blueberries today, so I got to keep hydrated. So
awesome,
nice.
awesome. And I'm going to Bend, Oregon today here, and I've got a fresh squeezed IPA. Delicious.
Looks very nice.
Yes, and man, I'm so happy it's Friday, and I'm so happy you're here, Sam.
Yeah, right on.
Ellen
Me
and I
too.
are
I'm
both
glad to be here.
Huge fans of your music. And for those folks out there who maybe haven't heard your music yet and don't know you as an artist, could you give us a brief bio and then how the record we're going to listen to today fits in to your timeline?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll just say this. I'm going by Sam Miltich, even though all my other stuff says Miltich. It's a new iteration. But that being said, I'm from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. I still live up here. I was born and raised about 15 miles northeast of town, and we're actually in the process of putting a house right up back on that same property. So I'm a Itasca County resident for many, many years, and got into playing music because my whole family played music. My granddad was an upright swing bass player, and my nana was a cellist, and all my aunts and uncles played. They played guitar and bass and piano and violin. And I just got into music at a fairly young age. I started taking piano lessons when I was a little kid, like normal, like little kids do. And then by the time I was 13, I said I want to join the big dog circle of my uncles all playing music in a circle. And the only way to join the circle was you had to have a guitar. So I figured I better get a guitar. So I did. And I started in the family jam sessions, and we just kind of did old singer-songwriter stuff and had some fun. My dad played some 5-string banjo back in those days. And did a little bit of Flat and Scruggs stuff going on. So that was fun. And then when I was about 15, I heard Django Reinhardt. And I really loved it because it was this combination of jazz and string instruments. And my family is Eastern European, and that Roma music always has that kind of Eastern European vibe, and Django had that. So it was like, wow, this is all my favorite music rolled into one. So I got into it about when I was 15 and just really kind of deeply pursued it into my early 20s. And then since I've played a lot of different styles, and I play a lot of just straight ahead jazz, and I play choro music, which is some mandolin music from Brazil. And then I got to play with Peter Ostrushko for a number of years, so I learned his bag of originals and fiddle tunes and choros and musettes and Ukrainian tunes. So I'm just kind of a music lover of all different stripes. As long as it's good, I like it. So it doesn't really matter the genre. If it's good, then I'm into it. So
nice.
And for folks who maybe have seen you perform before, it's been a while since I've seen you play live. I saw you appear on public television last fall, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But last time I saw you, you were wearing a suit, as in that promo shot for folks who maybe saw for the episode today.
Yes.
You're wearing a suit. You're clean shaven, and your name is spelled different. But we just want to clarify: you're all the same person.
Mostly.
Mostly the same person. But yeah, maybe we should ask, has anything else changed during quarantine other than maybe your hair and beard getting a little bit longer?
Well, I've been practicing a lot of solo guitar, and so I think my playing style is getting a little bit different in quarantine. I think everyone's playing style is probably getting a little bit different. A little more, we're all a little more self-sufficient in our solo shows now. Other than that, no, it's mostly the hair, the beard, and one extra syllable in the name. Other than that, I'm still the same old Sam.
Wonderful. Well, we're happy about that because we like the same old Sam. And for folks who maybe have not had a chance to hear your music, let's dig in to this record. Both Tony and I think posted separately on Facebook and Instagram today that we are like each listening to the records, preparing for the show, and we're just so jazzed about it because this music seems to be perfect for a summer Friday. So this album came out in 2019, Peasants with Torches. Is there anything you want to say before we dig into the first track?
Yeah, sure. So the title, I got to give credit to visual artist and sculptor Tom Page, who lives up here in Grand Rapids, who's really a brilliant guy, quite remarkable. And he had this concept that he called Peasants with Torches. And over the course of 2 or 3 years, he put on these multimedia disciplinary arts events here in Grand Rapids, and he rented out a large convention room in the hotel. And it was a combination of his sculptures, his paintings, and a lot of those paintings circled around local artists and musicians. So that's where the album cover came from, was from Tom Page. And it was all about sort of gathering musicians in, north central Minnesota. And public TV over in Bemidji filmed it and filmed the event. And so it got some nice publicity. And there was music, there was painting, there was sculpture, there was writing. Trying to think if there's anything else. There was dancing. And so it came from this kind of larger idea. And then I decided I wanted to do a record that delved deeper into my ethnic roots a bit. And, a lot of the tunes, a lot of the originals that were written were specifically written for that event, Peasants with Torches. So that's kind of the story behind it, the inspiration.
Oh, cool.
Very nice.
The first track we have lined up here, Majstore Cocek. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you're right.
Do you have, is there a background in this? This looks like it might have some personal ties.
Yeah, so I really love music from the Balkans. I'm part Balkan. My dad is Croatian. My grandfather lived in Croatia when he was a kid. And so music from the whole Balkan Peninsula is just really it's like soul music to me. So my family is Croatian, but this particular song comes from the Southern Balkans. So this is a Macedonian piece, and I think Roma musicians played it. And so a Cocek is kind of like a style of song. And so there's these different folk styles. So in Croatian and Serbian culture, there's the kolo, which is a type of dance, just like the Cocek is a type of dance. And typically the music accompanies people who are dancing, in a circle or, a traditional dance step. So anyways, that's kind of the story behind this tune. I found it in a book recommended to me from another fellow Minneapolis musician. And I thought, oh yeah, I got to do this one. So all the instrumentation on it, we can get more into instrumentation, but the melody that you're hearing is both violin as well, and we'll get into personnel too. And I'm playing what's called a tambura, which is a family of instruments, and the instrument that I'm playing the lead melody line is called a brach tambura. So that's a little bit of the backstory.
Fantastic. Thanks. All right, everybody. If you're at home, maybe you want to put those dancing shoes on now. This is Sam Miltich on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
And that was Sam Miltich with the tune. Let's see, Macedonian tune. Let's see if I get it right. My Story, Cocek.
Yes, you got it.
All right. And
You got it.
I have to say, so that tune, not only, of course, we're doing all kinds of dancing over here.
Yeah.
Not any traditional dance steps, but it definitely gets the blood moving. You can tell it's a dance tune. And it's funny, when I was listening to that, I was thinking when we were heading to today's show that I thought this album felt like very summertimey, and partly because I was thinking, we delve into some of the string swing and acoustic jazz stuff. But actually that track, I was like, why does this make me feel like the beach? And I realized that some of those melodies, there's a lot of it, old rock and roll surf music has a lot of those similar kinds of guitar melodies. And so it was kind of, I never really thought about that before.
I didn't either, but you're right.
That is totally right. Like Dick Dale or something.
Yeah. Like I was like, I could almost, I should be in a tiki bar.
Harmonic minor scale, man. It's got a vibe.
Oh, it sure does. And so I wanted to surf as much as I wanted to do some traditional Balkan dance.
Right on.
Right.
Perfect.
And of course, you mentioned you were going to talk about personnel, but after hearing all that, I just can't wait to hear who was fiddling and all the rest.
So it's kind of funny because it's like this traditional music, but it was like in no way traditional how this record was recorded. It was all track recorded. And I did the vast majority of the parts. So you're hearing, let's see here, I'm playing rhythm guitar on it. The solo and the rhythm, so I'm playing rhythm guitar, and I'm actually using what people think of as sort of the manouche hot club style samba rhythm, which works for the Cocek, same kind of groove. And then I'm playing brach tambura on that. My dad, Matthew Miltich, is playing the upright bass, and then violinist who I played with in the Hot Club of San Francisco by the name of Evan Price is doing violin, and then Jay Epstein, Minneapolis drummer extraordinaire, is doing the percussion and drum parts. Fantastic. And I actually decided to have drums in that because it had sort of the tamburica sound. But that music is from more of the Southern Balkans, and there's more percussion used in sort of the Roma music down there. And that song, could also, the way I did it isn't necessarily traditional, and you would probably hear a horn group play that, like a large brass band. And one of the things that's really fascinating about the Balkans in terms of the music is there was the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish empire in the Balkans, as well as the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so both of those cultural influences influenced both the music and the food, of course, and all different cultural aspects. But one thing that I found really fascinating was right around the same time that jazz was being developed in the United States, let's say, the last part of the 19th century, the 1800s, this music was kind of emerging in the Balkans, and similar circumstance that there was these horns that were lying around from military bands, so Turkish military bands, or in the United States, it was after the Civil War military bands. So there's all these, horns that were created, and African Americans here in the United States started picking up those horns, and African rhythms started to be fused into that particular instrumentation. And then the same is true in the Balkans with Roma people picking up those instruments and infusing their own rhythmic understanding. So there's always this beautiful cultural cross-pollination that goes on in music. So anyways, that's kind of a little bit of the history with that style of tune, but I decided to do it string music because I'm a string guy, and use the tamburica instruments because they're also traditional Balkan. So anyways, that's kind of the personnel. That's the, how this whole record was recorded.
So it was just like sending tracks back and forth then? Or?
Actually, it started with me and my dad going into the studio, and we would lay down a track. And then, same deal, I have Jay come in. But the violin parts, this is sort of like perfect for COVID time. I recorded it in a studio Do you know who Rich Mattson and the North Stars are? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Rich is my second cousin, and he's got this wonderful studio in Sparta, and it's an old Lutheran church. And Sparta's a kind of a tumbled down old mining location, and he got this old church, turned it into his house and recording studio, and it's just awesome. And it was a lot closer for me to drive to his place in Eveleth than it was to go to Minneapolis to record. So this record took me like 3 or 4 years to do, because it was like building a house on your own. It was a pay as you go kind of a thing. And so I'd drive over and we'd work for a couple hours, and I'd drive home and, bring a bag lunch the next day and do a little more. But then when we'd get, me and Dad and Jay's tracks put together, then we'd put it in a Dropbox, and Evan, living in Mill Valley outside of San Francisco, would open the Dropbox and he'd record his little part, and then I'd open the Dropbox and go, oh my God, that sounds fantastic. So it's like the least traditional way to record this music, but
you fooled me, man. I really thought it was a live track. The energy was there. I don't know if was it to a click track, or do you guys just let it flow?
That one, I think we just let it flow, and that was, I guess the live part was, the bass and guitar part, we did those together in the same session or whatever. But other than that, it was track recorded. So, and I really wanted to have Evan on a record. I'd never had him on a record, and he's like one of the greatest living jazz violinists. Like, and I'm not just saying that, he really, really is.
Yeah.
And he's, I had many wonderful years working with him in the Hot Club of San Francisco, touring around the United States, and so.
Sam, okay, so back up.
Yeah.
Breaks on. That is a huge deal. Like San Francisco, the Hot Club of San Francisco. Tell us how that came to be. I mean, what a education that must have been for you.
Oh God,
and how did you get hooked up with that, and maybe talk a little bit about how that experience shaped you as a musician.
Good question. Yeah, so I was 15 and I wanted to learn the Django style, and I first heard it off of Woody Allen's film Sweet and Low Down, and just became enamored with the style, and I had no resources living in Grand Rapids, Minnesota for how to learn this. So my dad found, this is back in the days of VHS, you guys. He found,
we remember.
Yeah. He found these VHS tapes from Homespun Music,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you guys know about Homespun.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got these VHS tapes and, worked through them. And I said to my dad, I need to be with someone to learn more. I have to figure, and he said, well, my sister was living in San Francisco at the time, and he said, you want to drive to San Francisco and see if we can find this guy, Paul Mailing? And I said, yeah, let's do it. It was the summer I was 16.
Wow.
And we had a little Honda Accord, 1989 Honda Accord with a stick shift, manual. And so we drove through the mountains in a little Honda Accord stick shift down Lolo Pass and into Idaho. And then we went down the coast. Went to San Francisco, and I took like 2 or 3 lessons with Paul Mailing, who's the leader of the Hot Club of San Francisco, and went to a place called Enrico's, which was an Italian restaurant where he played. And anyways, did the lesson, and we kind of hit it off. He was meeting a young guy who was deep into Django like he was, and I wound up going out there again another time a year or so later, and he would just kind of load me up with information and then give me as much instructional material as he could find that existed. And, he mailed me records, and he was really kind of a mentor to me for that style of music. So when I was 18, I had some kind of major notoriety. There was a national public radio story that was done on Weekend Edition about this 18-year-old kid in northern Minnesota who learned to play like French manouche guys without ever hanging out with French manouche guys. so that kind of launched my performing career, so to speak. And that same time, Clearwater Hot Club started to get more gigs. And then I was playing with Paul Mailing in the Hot Club of San Francisco, and we would do like, we'd go out for like a week and a half, and I'd fly out to, Maine and we'd get in a van and drive down to New Jersey and then get on airplanes and all fly back home, with our pockets a little heavier, hopefully. And so I was one of the Pazzo is what he goes by. Paul Mailing, Pazzo's band was really traditional hot club. So there was 2 rhythm guitars, just like Django had in the Quintet of the Hot Club of France. So there was 2 rhythm guitars. I played rhythm guitar, upright bass with gut strings, to get that 1930s sound. Paul was on lead guitar, and then Evan Price played violin. And then other times we played with another guy named Olivier Monchon, who was a French violinist who was really marvelous too. So, I got to kind of just sit and listen to those guys and really hone my sense of time and my swing feel playing rhythm guitar. And just got to keep my eyes and ears open and soak it all in. And then, every night it was like, okay, well, let's jam in the hotel lobby. Wow. Grab a beer and, play or go up to the room and have a jam session. And so we were just playing all the time, it was just music nonstop,
the ultimate
playing
post-secondary education.
Yeah. It was for me, I didn't go to college at the time because I was working, and I played with him until from 18 to 21, I think. So for 3 years. And, it was a remarkable experience. And the other musicians, the Roma musicians that I got to meet playing at some of the festivals was like, just like stunning, how can this be humanly possible to play like this?
Well, just think, you have now inspired another generation of musicians who are getting to see you play all over the place. In fact, even our guest last week, Jillian Ray, who's a well-known fiddler around these parts, she was like, "You have Sam Miltich coming on the show." She was all excited. So,
right on.
Yeah.
Very
so
nice.
Yeah, it's nice to see you doing that and bringing this, both the traditional music with some new styles and flavors, and recording it in a modern way. If folks just tuned into Back Catalog Listening Party, we're talking with Sam Miltich. He's joining us from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And we're talking about his 2019 release, Peasants with Torches. But as he mentioned, he recorded it over many years. So it probably feels pretty old, even though, and also doesn't 2019 feel like a really long time ago right now?
Remember 2019?
Oh, 2019 was so nice.
Oh, those days. Those wonderful, beautiful
the good old days. Well, we want to dig more into the music. Before we do, I do want to give a couple shout outs. Bevan and Linda from Connecticut. Connie saying she's loving the music history. Anne from Northfield. Thank you all for joining us.
Anne.
Yeah. Nice. And if folks out there are listening and have questions for Sam or think of things as we listen to the music, throw it in the comments and we'll try and answer all those questions. The next tune we have queued up is Homesick. And what can you tell us about this tune?
Homesick. So I wanted to do both traditional tunes, but also originals. So this is an original composition of mine. And the story behind it was my family on my dad's side, very typical, common Iron Range story, Eastern European, Southeastern European stock. My family, my dad's side is Croatian, and the history of the range is always like this very male-dominated experience that gets talked about, how hard it was working in the mines and, building the labor unions and all this stuff. And I just had this thought that occurred to me. I was working in my garden one day, and I was imagining what life was like for my great-grandmother, who was born in Dubrovnik, or near Dubrovnik, which is now like a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world, situated on the Adriatic Sea. And I just thought about how life must have been extremely hard to leave a place like that. And then I was imagining what it would be like to go from a Mediterranean climate to living in Virginia, Minnesota.
Which is not like Virginia. It's pretty cold up there. It's pretty
cold.
far north.
This is like 50 below zero for real, folks. And so I just tried to imagine life for an immigrant Iron Range woman and what that would feel like. And so I wrote this tune, Homesick, thinking of my great-grandmother raising my granddad and all his siblings in a little tiny house in the north side of Virginia, Minnesota.
Awesome. Let's give it a listen. This is Sam Miltich, Homesick, on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Beautiful. That was Sam Miltich from his 2019 release, Peasants with Torches, an original called Homesick, inspired by his Croatian great grandmother. And I have to say, you know, the first track we heard was, of course, a rip-roaring, fast tune, get your dancing shoes on. And then this tune was like, I feel like this is the end of the night. Like after you've
Yeah.
had maybe one too many glasses of wine and you're remembering, the homeland or whatever, or those that have passed. It has this very nostalgic, sentimental feel that's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
In fact, Chris said he was weeping after the first measure. So
High praise.
And if you guys like what you're hearing out there, make sure to fill up Sam's tip jar. He has a PayPal. There it is on the screen, and the link is also in the comments. And also, this album is available for sale as well as all the digital platforms too. And as you said, you spent a lot of time recording this over a couple years. And this tune was this. It had sounded like there were fewer tracks or fewer instruments. Did it take less time than that first track?
For Homesick,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. This one might have been recorded fairly early on. I know that I actually did rhythm guitar. I did brach, but I did a rhythm feel with it, and then I used my Priam Bizernica tambura to do the kind of the overdubs on top, the backing of the tremolo, kind of mandolin sound. It sounds like going on. I did that, and so, all of these arrangements are kind of collaborations between stuff that I came up with and then ideas that Rich came up with. He's kind of the producer for this thing, and yeah, it was such a ball working with him. We just worked. It was instantaneous.
Yeah, it's interesting because Rich is I think of him often as kind of like roots rock, Americana kind of vibe, but he really got what you were doing in a beautiful way, because I would have never guessed that he produced. But yeah, again, you said there's a familial connection. So.
Yeah, maybe it's in the blood. Yeah, I mean that song was written for my great grandmother, who's also his great grandmother. So I don't know, maybe it's in the genes. But he actually just had a really natural instinct for production, where he'd go, yeah, let's do 2 takes and then see how that sounds. And he would always say, yeah, I think you got 2 more takes in you before, you know what I mean? And he would just kind of spur me on, and he'd say, come up with a little more lyrical kind of a thing. And every suggestion that he gave me, whether to keep a track or use a different track for a lead line, all of it was, oops, I'm sorry, guys. All of it was just super spot on. And it was part of the joy of making this record was working with him. And he's the world's most laid back guy. He's so nice, so easy to work with, and so good at what he does. It was a pure joy.
It sounds phenomenal. Actually, I'm interested to hear more of his work. But I have a question for you.
Yes.
When did you start writing songs?
I didn't really start doing much writing until more of my late 20s. Maybe 10 years ago is when I kind of started doing some more writing, and I'm actually trying to get more kind of into it since COVID stuff has been happening, because it's a way that a person can sit in their house and do a little home recording and record some original music. But yeah, I think it was in my mid 20s, and I was so consumed with just trying to master the style, because the jazz manouche thing, hot club music, is so physically demanding. It just felt like it took all of my time just to be able to play the guitar.
I can't imagine. There's a lot of notes going on.
Yeah.
I always complain about bluegrass, but when I hear hot club players, I'm like, holy cow.
I know.
It
It's
makes
terrifying.
the banjo sound slow.
It's terrifying, and I can't do justice to what these Roma guys in France can do, because they just, it's unbelievable. And so, when you're admiring those kinds of players, it just all of my energy went into trying to play. And then as I aged, I wanted to put my own stamp on things. And I kind of have a process for how I write, a way I think about stuff.
I'd love to hear a little bit about that, just because, a lot of times the music that I'm thinking about has words. I'm always really fascinated with how people approach instrumental music. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I'll mention, the next couple tunes that are coming up here. Homesick was actually one of those spontaneous things where I just had this melody inside my head. And I just had a single, my acoustic guitar, and I just did this little chord melody where I put the melody on top and the chords underneath, and it just kind of blossomed into what it was. It's a very simple song. It's a simple melody. It's supposed to feel sorrowful and not supposed to be anything crazy,
It's more of a feeling.
Yeah, more of a feeling, man. You know?
Yeah, no, but I
Yeah.
think that's a legitimate response to that question.
Yeah.
I mean, like sometimes that's the most appropriate.
Yeah,
know,
and so that
melody.
tune was kind of that thing, but I have other ways I think about it, like with We'll Hear Martha's Dream and We'll Hear Now's the Time to Panic. When I did Now's the Time to Panic, I specifically wanted a longer form. I wanted it to be I'll go, okay, well, what feel do I want to have? Okay, well, I want it to be a swing tune. But I don't want it to be a standard 32 bar. I want to break free of that. So I want to have a longer form, right? And a lot of times, like my chord progressions, whether it's advertent or inadvertent, I wind up using, just there's nothing new under the sun, right? These are just kind of simple swing tunes. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to use the chord progression from this tune, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. So I got a form, I got a rhythm, then I got to come up with a melody. And typically what I try and do is, I have my licks and scales and riffs like we all do. And I'll record the rhythm part and the form and the rhythm and the chord progression. You got a chord progression. Then I just solo over the top of it. But what I try and do is I try and distill the solo. I try and find a little melodic theme that's inside of a lick or a scale and just distill it until it's more melodic. Or I'll try and play a lead line and literally sing and play the line at the same time to make it a little more melodic. It's just a little...
Yeah, like you could hear like a word somehow, even if it's nonsense words.
Yeah, exactly. So it has a phrasing to it, that makes sense. So that's kind of how I think about it. It's a little bit of a template. It's a little bit cookie cutter, but it works for me and it gets stuff out of my head. So it's kind of the combination of there are those tunes that are just kind of the sheer inspiration and the feeling, like the last one we heard, Homesick, and then there's the ones that are a little more constructed. But we'll do this one, and then we'll talk more about Martha's Dream, because I kind of want to get into that, about how that came into being.
Well, this tune feels very appropriate for our times right now.
Yeah, where did this title come from? I'm
Now's
curious.
the time to panic.
This was written right around the last presidential election.
Well, okay, that explains a lot.
Little prophetic. I had to giggle. And does the do you have? Is this one of those, like when you're writing instrumentals, does the title come afterwards, or do you have like this title in mind and you want to try to fit some of those melodic ideas into it?
Oh, that's a good question. I can't remember which, but when you hear the melody, I think the title fits. So.
It sure does. Well, this is a great tune. I'm excited for everybody to hear it. Everybody, this is Sam Miltich on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Now's the Time to Panic.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Militich from his 2019 release, Peasants with Torches. That was an original. Now's the Time to Panic, written around the time of the last presidential election. But I think many of us would say, no, actually, now is maybe the time to panic.
Yeah, it's a title that just is always more
Always
relevant.
relevant.
More relevant. I remember watching, I saw this Jim Gaffigan bit where he said, I wish the term unprecedented would go back to being unprecedented.
Right. It's true.
Some things occurred to me while we were listening to that. It's funny how these songs will do that. But you guys are asking about the title. This is one thing I remember. Paul Mailing, Pazzo, had a tune that we played in the Hot Club of San Francisco that was called Don't Panic. So this tune is my little counterpart to his Don't Panic. Mine is Now is the Time.
Now
We should
is
panic.
the time.
And then there is some Mel Brooks movie, and I cannot remember which one, where they say, this is not the time to panic. This is not the time to panic. Now's the time to panic.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers, put it in the comments.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. And actually, we had a comment from Adele asking if you, she came in a little bit late about whether you had other people on this track. And I'm assuming kind of like the other tracks, you tracked a lot of the parts, but then you also had your dad on bass and some Jay Epstein and all that.
Yep. So that was the same. It's all the same musicians. Jay was on that. And one thing that I was thinking about with that tune is when I wrote that, I was talking about sort of a template. And this harkens back to when I was playing in the Hot Club of San Francisco. I really wanted to have like a string instrument Count Basie vibe. Like I wanted to sort of emulate what would happen in the Count Basie orchestra with this tune. So, when you hear the violins doing the backing parts behind me, it's like what the horns would be doing behind a soloist. Same deal with the rhythm guitar style. It's like thinking about kind of how, Freddie Green would have played behind if you were in a Django band, that was kind of the feeling I wanted to convey. Was a string version of the way the Basie band would play. And I was really turned on to Lester Young by Evan Price and Paul Mailing in that group. And, so that's, for all of us that were in that band, the 1930s, late 1930s Basie band with Lester Young in it was a major influence. And, we've that group. And then in my playing, it's kind of more of an American version of Hot Club Swing, like the feel of the swing. There's like different feelings within swing. It's, there's more of what I call the vertical versus horizontal feel where, straight ahead feels like swells more. Whereas Hot Club Swing is more like peaks and valleys, and it's a more of an up and down vertical type swing in terms of the time feel. And then it's a matter of, where you're sitting, where the rhythm section is and where the soloist is sitting on the beat. And I typically, a lot of Hot Club players are, especially Roma guys, are way on the front end of the beat, and there's that kind of phrase leading that pulls the listener into the next phrase, and it's very much in the style of, say, like the Sardas, which is the Hungarian violin music that Roma people play, whereas I sort of intentionally, in both just how I feel it, because probably how I was raised, is I try and play more right smack dab in the middle of the beat. Because like a beat's like this, a beat isn't like this. A beat is like this, and you can be here, you can be here, you can be a little behind. And the rhythm section needs to stay rock solid, of course. But the soloist, we get to flex, and it's always a negotiation between the various players and our time feels. And that creates that tension and the emotion in the music.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Sure.
There's a lot of parallels with bluegrass playing. There's this riding the beat, especially for banjo players. Any banjo players out there, and you can usually tell banjo players that are from the Southeast, who are born and raised with a certain kind of traditional sound, versus banjo players up here in the Upper Midwest and other places. And I don't know about you, Ellen, but anytime I try to play very traditionally, it still comes out Midwestern. And I can totally relate to what you're saying in this other context. And I think that's cool because it gives it its regional voice.
Yeah, and the same is true with when you think about American jazz, because the way people in New Orleans played versus the way people in Kansas City played versus the way people in New York or Chicago played, different locations and different eras of how I was talking about swing and how it's different, but you can hear all those cultural influences too happening. And the same is true for, the hot club music in Europe, where, even the technical style of the way, say, someone in the Netherlands and Germany plays is different than the way they play it in France. The rhythm, though, as they call it, la pompe. And the German style is a little straighter, and the French style is a little more, lends itself a little more to sort of American swing. So it's the same. I think that's just how music is.
Yeah, I love it. It's universal language, but it gets adapted.
It's like different dialects.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, if folks just tuned in, we're talking with Sam Miltich, and he's joining us, speaking of regions, from northern Minnesota. We have someone tuning in from Ihrig as well today.
Oh, Roy.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
And that's what the Back Catalog Listening Party is all about getting together with old friends and new to talk about music, to dig into old records. And this one came out in 2019, but again, Sam spent a few years making it. And again, 2019 feels like a long time.
A lifetime ago.
And again, if folks are looking for Sam's music, again, it's Sam Miltich. There's been a few different spellings, just the way many immigrant families have had different spellings over the years. I think the original version had a C had no H, right?
That's right, yeah.
And then an accent, yeah.
Yep.
And then Sam Miltich, and then his website is Sam Miltich, a shortened version of that. So it's all the same person, despite lack of facial hair. That's just COVID situation, but definitely find his music. Great stuff.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we at least have time for one more tune because you were mentioning this tune in particular. So let's just dig right into the tune and then we can chat a little bit more about it. This is Martha's Dream, another original, right?
Yes, correct.
From Sam Miltich, Peasants with Torches, here in the Back Catalog Listening Party. right. Sam Miltich with Martha's Dream from his 2019 release, Peasants with Torches.
Nice.
Sam is our guest today on Back Catalog Listening Party. And that tune, Sam, has like, I don't know, it had kind of a lounge vibe almost like going on in that. Like it had a, I don't know, real mellow vibe. And I somehow I felt shag carpet on my feet. I don't know. It just happened when I heard that. So tell us a little bit about Martha's Dream. Was this a real dream?
Well, yeah, the story behind that was I tried to take there was a tune titled Nika's Dream that was written by Horace Silver. And then there was a tune called Estate that was written a guy named Bruno Martino, and it was done by João Gilberto. So this is where the shag carpet is coming
Excellent,
in.
yeah.
This is
Totally can hear that.
The 1960s bossa nova João Gilberto vibe. So
yeah,
those were the two things that I was going for, and I have a friend who's who kind of helped me during a challenging time, and she really helped me keep my business and my music life afloat when I really needed an extra person to step in. And I just thought, I want to try and write a song for this person to thank them for what they've done for me. So I decided to do that. And there's the tune titled Nika's Dream, which is about Panonica, who was, they called her the Jazz Baroness, who wound up helping out a lot of jazz musicians, Charlie Parker and Thelonious Monk, Horace Silver, and she was kind of immortalized in song. So I thought, well, this person has helped me, so I'll try and write a song for her. And we've played together, Martha and I. This is Martha Larson, and she introduced me to this wonderful Jobim tune, Inutil Paisagem. So I thought, okay, I'll try and put together a bossa nova for her. So that's the connection.
Nice, very cool. And I do want to mention that Anne had did a little plug, which we were going to do, but she beat us to it. Consider a Patreon membership with Sam, cool benefits. And I hear that one of those benefits, Sam, is a video every week from you.
Yeah.
For people who don't know Patreon, it's where folks can be a monthly kind of contributor to your music, a monthly be a patron for your music, and can be any amount. Usually, can be small.
Yeah, it can be just $10 if you want, and I do a once a week tune I record, and then I do a monthly 1 hour concert because we had our weekly gig up here in Grand Rapids at our local VFW, which, when it rains, it pours. Right before COVID, our club burned down.
Oh, no.
Yeah, which was a real drag. So anyways, that happened, and then it didn't really matter because COVID would have shut it down anyways. But we did our weekly gig, or our monthly gig there, and we would get grant funding from the Minnesota State Arts Board. And it was really a ball. We would bring in guest artists. So Jay Epstein or Nathan Norman would come up and play drums. And then we had a rotating cast of characters. We have Dave Carr come, Tony Bailiff, Dave Graff, Doug Haining, Charmin Michelle, Chris Lomheim, a wonderful guitar player from Grand Portage named Breon Morrison. So we would have a house band with me and Dad and Jay or Nathan. And then we'd have a guest soloist come in, and we'd play First Friday. And Grand Rapids for the past 10 years has had a First Friday art walk. And my wife helped facilitate that because she runs the Visual Art Center here in town, McCroskey Art Center. And so all the businesses would stay open on First Friday of the month, and people would come down to the club and hear some good jazz. And so I'm keeping my first Friday nights going, be it virtually and be it without. It's no longer Sam and friends. It's just Sam, but
Sam has no friends.
Not right now.
Yeah, and on Facebook Live as well. I don't know if we mentioned that, but as soon as we're done with this broadcast, you're already watching on Facebook. Go over to his page and subscribe.
Right. Today is Friday. If you lost track, it's not only time for Back Catalog Listening Party, but Sam's weekly concert. So 8 p.m. Central Time. You can catch Sam.
Monthly concert.
First Friday.
Yeah.
This is not the first Friday. See, I can keep track of the day of the week, but not which week it is. So
don't worry, we're all doing that.
Well, I know that I've always been a little jealous of Grand Rapids when I've seen that lineup, and this is a way for everybody to tune in and get a taste of that and what Sam has to offer. So we do highly recommend that you head over to his Facebook page And this Patreon service is a great service. I put a link in the comments. Consider patronizing Sam.
Much.
That's how art is going to survive this. There's a lot of questions. What's going to happen? And it turns out that that music fans, are willing to actually pay for music.
Yes.
And we're so grateful for that.
Yep.
Yeah, and we want to thank everyone who's joined us today for Back Catalog Listening Party and had a kind of virtual trip into the Balkans and to Brazilian music, all kinds of places, and up into northern Minnesota. So this has been really fun. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam, today.
Thank you, guys.
Great.
Yeah,
and
very, very grateful and honored you asked. So.
Well, great to see your face, even if it's from far away. And
yes, you too.
Hopefully we will see you soon, at least on Facebook, if not in person one of these days.
One of these days.
Exactly. And if regular folks or folks want to tune in next week to Back Catalog Listening Party, we have the Gated Community joining us. If you don't know them, you need to tune in because they're just wild. They're just a fun sort of a string band. I think they call themselves a Marxist Americana string band. You just got to check it out.
I think there's post-apocalyptic or something.
There is.
That makes me want it. That does make me want to tune in hearing that title.
And I will say the lead singer, who's amazing, Sumant Gopinath, he is he's a musical professor at the U, knows all about musicology, but he grew up in Louisiana, has, just a really interesting musical mix. So again, I would highly recommend folks check out next week. And if you like this week's episode, share it with a friend. It will be up on Facebook. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for being here. It's the highlight of our weekend, Sam. Mm-hmm. Thanks again for doing what you do and sharing it with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Cheers, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Until next week, we'll see you on the Back Catalog Listening Party.